My name is Pauline Massard. I'm a partner at the Brussels office of Avisa Partners. We're a global consultancy headquartered in Paris with offices in Brussels, London, Geneva, Washington, D.C., and Miami, of all places. We're active in business risk, business intelligence, global advocacy, and I personally represent the cyber and strategy branch, which has three key activities. One being cybersecurity, operational cybersecurity, through our subsidiary Lexfo, with about 80 engineers working daily on cybersecurity issues and incident response. With my team in Brussels doing research and consultancy in strategic and technico-operational cybersecurity. And finally, of course, the FIC, the International Cybersecurity Forum, which is why we're all here today. The FIC is an annual event which happens in Lille. It has, in just over 10 years, become Europe's largest event in cybersecurity, covering really the 360 degrees of cybersecurity. And it is happening from the 7th to the 9th of June, as it says just above me. Last year, we were lucky enough to welcome 10,500 people in Lille. The FIC is both a 3-day conference with a program that really will make your head spin, and of course a 3-day trade fair with over 500 partners. So that's enough from me. We're going to jump right into today's topic, which is of course EU funding for cybersecurity. You should all have a little paper with all our speakers' bios, so I don't have to bore you with their life and what they have done, which is a lot, of course. We will start with Phédra Clouner, who, of course, is Deputy Director of the CCB, the Belgian Cybersecurity Center. And Phédra, I guess really what we'd love to hear from you is, what are the needs? What are the needs from the people on the ground in the front line of the fight against cyber threats? What are the needs in terms of funding?
Thank you so much, Pauline, for the welcoming and so on. So I will explain. So my point of view today is the point of view of a cybersecurity national agency, Belgian one, not the biggest one in the world, I have to say. But so we identified some priorities in Belgium. And I have to say also that I don't have a clue about all the technique around funding, European funding, and so on. What I know is the fact that I have some priorities as a national cybersecurity agency, and I just want to implement this priority. And to implement this priority, of course, I need money. So I have explained. I will explain also the complexity of Belgium. It's a tiny country, but it's not so easy around cybersecurity, because normally cybersecurity it's a federal competence, but of course region and communities and so on have a lot of stuff to do also in cybersecurity. So I will begin with our strategy, because maybe you know it or maybe you don't know it, but we have a new cybersecurity strategy since the month of May 2021, and this strategy is around 6 axes. I don't have the time to explain all the axes, but it's so interesting, you have to read it. And one of these axes is training the digital environment and increase trust in the digital environments. So it's to invest in a secure network infrastructure. It's to invest in innovation, because in Belgium we have a lot of really interesting companies and innovative companies, and we have to invest in these companies. It's also foster expertise and knowledge, but I think it's the same problem in every European and every country in the world. It's also all the aspects around cybersecurity certification and so on. And it's strengthening the skills of intelligence and security agencies, because there is a lot of actors in Belgium, but it's the same in all countries. We have a real war of talents in Belgium, but it's the same everywhere. One of the other axes is also arming users and administrator of computers and network, because there is a lot of problem in awareness in cybersecurity, and we have to work on it. And we have also to inform all these users and administrators around threat and vulnerabilities. It's also to protect organization and of vital interest against all cyber threats and its operator of essential services, critical infrastructure, and so on. Responding to the cyber threats, and we have to increase the level of maturity of some services in Belgium, by example, security and intelligence services, because, as I said, there is a lot of threats in Belgium, and Belgium, European institution, NATO, and so on, and we have to invest in these services. We want also to increase the collaboration, the international collaboration. It's really important also, of course. So it's the axis of the national strategy. But as I said, there is another actors in Belgium, and we have also to take in count. My English is so full. So if it's not understandable, say it, please. We have also to play with other actors, and it's not easy because there is regions in Belgium, but there is also some communities in Belgium, and region it's for innovation, research, and so on, and communities it's for education. So we have to play with all these actors. And as a national agency, because I forgot to say it, but since the 23rd of December we are also the National Competence Center. It's the big news, so now we have to organize it. We have also to take in count the priorities of the region and the communities. The chance is the fact that it's quite the same that the national priorities. It's the good news, because at the beginning it was not so obvious, but we have the priorities of the Walloons region and Wallonia, Wallonia, and it's to protect also the administration. It's to raise awareness. It's to protect the SME, because SME it's a big problem in all the region. It's the good news or not? I think it's not the good news, because there is some problem of protection of SME in Belgium, and we have also the priority of the Flemish region. And Flemish region, it's also to raise the awareness, to protect the organization, but it's also to encourage the industry in innovation, in cybersecurity, and so on. And we have also the priority of BELSPO, and BELSPO is around all the stuff around the European Space Agency and so on. So we put all these people around the table, and we defined the priority in Belgium. And the good news, and I think that we will talk about it with Miguel, is the fact that our Belgian priority is more or less, même plus que less, aligned with the European priorities defined in the context of the European Cybersecurity Competence Center. I'm really happy because if it was not the case, I think that we could have a problem. And now we are organizing, but I think that we will talk about it later, the organization around the National Competence Center, because we have now the really high-level priorities of the administration, the politics, and so on. But now we have to define the priorities of the ground, the famous community about we talk in the context of the European Competence Center. And now we are working, and we will see maybe it later, because I'm talking a lot, I know, on the way we will now what are the priority of the community in Belgium.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. And I will come back to the complexity that you mentioned about Belgium. My Belgian friends always tell me, if you've understood the Belgian system, it's that it's been wrongly explained to you.
I'm so agree, pardon.
Excellent. So we turn now to Miguel, of course, who is the head of unit for cybersecurity at the European Commission's DG Connect. Miguel, you're, of course, for a couple of months now, the acting director of the brand new center that everybody has hailed. How are you, as the European Commission, responding to these priorities, and what can we expect to see come next? What lessons learned have you also drawn perhaps from recent experience in terms of EU funding for cybersecurity?
Well, first of all,
It's on.
it's on. Okay. First of all, good evening to everybody, and thanks a lot for the invitation. So so my perspective that complementing that of Phédra so far is from the European Commission. So coming from above, the farthest from the ground, let's say, and. Well, first of all, I have to say that there's been public funding, European funding for cybersecurity for a while, and that has been in the domain of research. So this is the first area where actually the EU has supported cyber. Before there was any legislation, there's been support for this area for a long time. It was called differently at the time, more digital security and so. But this has been going on for a while, and it continues with the Horizon Europe program. There was recently an evaluation, a call for proposals, and there will be another one coming up, just a commercial break. So, but that continues, and then there's a new addition, which is the Digital Europe program that supports cybersecurity as well, but the later stage after research. So which is more uptake, industrial capacities and deployment. Actually not totally new in the spirit, because we had something called before the Connecting Europe facility, the first edition, which was smaller scale, but it was exactly the same purpose, which is to have an instrument that supports the market more directly, not research, but really the market. And there's also, since cybersecurity is becoming increasingly important because of digitization becoming increasingly important, you find more of it. Public support funding, in particular in the Next Generation EU Recovery and Resilience Facility, in several of the national programs. For that, you can see lines of support for public funding for cybersecurity, also in structural funds. This is also picking up there. So one of the questions there is how efficient this is. So of course the jury is out, but the kind of the intention, let's say, it's there, the acknowledgement of the importance of cybersecurity, which provides the background to this proposal for a competence center of network, which I recall the primary objective of it. The first important objective is precisely to identify together the priorities for cybersecurity investment. Then it's to implement them and manage the funding. But the most important thing I would say of the construction is to identify the priorities, and then to structure, because starting from the recognition that there is a certain degree of fragmentation when it comes to cybersecurity. There's also, let's say, a structure that is put in place with the national coordination centers, indeed, and the cyber community. And then there's another, let's say, challenge that is tackled there, which is, how can I say, the need for more, for Europe to step up to the plate, because there's a lot of, let's say, foreign solutions that are used in Europe. And there's this ambition to produce, to have more European solutions. So, very roughly speaking, I would say that the European policy in terms of cybersecurity has this twin objective, which is it's about protection and national security, and that's quite important as well. But it's also a market issue. It's an economic issue, because digitization, digital agenda. It's one of the it started as one of the two top priorities of this commission, together with the green agenda. So in the meantime, there were all the things that came up, like COVID. Now we have a very nasty war very close to home, and so security and defense have become very top to the agenda, which, by the way, also links to cybersecurity, because there's an important dimension to it. But going back just for a moment to the competence center, cybersecurity competence center and network, as I said, the idea there is to really literally sit around the table, starting with member states, because this is a European Union of member states, but of course then with the community, and then with the national coordination centers organizing that dialogue to identify what are the priorities in terms of investment. And this is what Phédra referred to. It's interesting to note that there's convergence in the analysis. Roughly speaking, I would say we started to prepare to gather, let's say, to scope the landscape with ECSO in particular, with ENISA and with others, and then we've started indeed the conversation with member states, and there's a high degree of alignment in what the challenges are and what the needs are. Now the next step is to see how to turn this into something that can make the difference, which will be the subject of the debate. But things like the challenges to the supply chain in terms of cybersecurity, sharing information, well, of course, dealing with linked also to the supply chain, the ever expanding attack surface that we have, the challenges with skills, uptake of research. With the acknowledgement that there's very good research and talent in Europe, but still we have an issue with taking it to the market, which is not news because it's not just in cybersecurity that it happens. And I would say all of these things, there's quite an alignment. Now, the matter is, how to translate this into something that can be made operational. How can we, and this is very important to me, really complement what member states are doing, so that we don't duplicate. And then there's a question, very important, of course, it's one of the questions here in the program, complement what the public sector does with what the private sector does. There might be not always full convergence in terms of, seeking for synergies. And in the case of the public authorities, we need to look for the best solutions at the, with a smaller cost. But then, as I said, that's a good news. The starting point is there's a lot of alignment in the priorities and the challenges. Now, operationalization is important, and then to reach out to the market players, to the community, to have alignment and synergies in the action. And I will leave it at that for now.
Thank you very much indeed. It's interesting that you alluded to, without using the word, well done, you alluded to digital sovereignty, and this is an interesting aspect that I think will be looked at during the FIC, in fact, in Lille. The FIC will be the kind of the closing point of the French presidency when it comes to all things cybersecurity. And of course, the French have been quite vocal about having more sovereignty, call it what you will, but certainly in the digital sphere. So that was certainly an interesting point. We're going to turn to Luigi next, and then we'll go to our final speaker, who I'm sure will have some things to say about the link with between the private and the public funding side of things. But first off, Luigi, who of course is the Secretary General of ECSO. I don't think Luigi needs any introduction in Brussels anymore, and of course I mean that as a compliment. But Luigi, really, how would you react to everything that's been said? How have your members and how have you seen this evolution? Of course, as Miguel mentioned, from funding really only the research side of cybersecurity. Are you seeing the right evolution right now? Are we going in the right direction? Don't be too critical. I'm joking.
You know me too well. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, you know me too well. Usually critical because I saw too many things for many years. Actually, when I look ahead and say, well, we are moving too slowly. When I look backward, I say, wow, we have done a lot. In the last 6 years of ECSO and with the Commission and so on, we've really done a lot. And what this Commission is building up now with this competence center, also with the countries, that's exactly what we said at the very beginning. We need to build up at national level, national structures, organizations, and so on. And you have to network all this, like in the network of national competence centers, because it's exactly there where things will happen. Things are not necessarily happening in Brussels. So in Brussels, we have legislation, we do lobby, we do advocacy, whatever you want to call it. But then the real life is in the countries at regional and local level. This is the real story. So this is where we have to mobilize. And this is also brings me to one of the point, which is, well, Miguel said, identified very well. He said we are quite aligned on the challenges, not on the solution yet. Hopefully we'll soon. But in the challenges, yes, the skills, the trusted supply chains, and others. But one point I would like to raise, especially, it's education, the skills. Everybody says, yes, it's important. We're missing 500,000 of experts in Europe and so on. But how much are we really investing in this? Very, very little, if not nothing. Nothing really, I mean, negligible amount to overcome this gap of 500,000 experts needed in cybersecurity in Europe now. And you know what? That was a reaction something like 5 years ago when they said, okay, at that time there was a publication from the Commission say that we were needing something like 350,000 experts in cybersecurity by 2022. So we are, well, okay. And they said, okay, so why we are neglecting 50% of the population? Why don't we do something to bring women also in this domain? And so we have created Women for Cyber. That's exactly for that point. And what is interesting is that when I look at ECSO, somehow we have a relatively limited amount of resources to develop what you can call education, training, and so on. But we are receiving donations from a certain number of companies for doing exactly that for women. So at the end, we are using resources, money, which are coming for education and training of women, which then will be used also for men. So it's just the other way around, in a sense. But this is, for me, one of the biggest priority we are not tackling enough today. Education, skills, and so on. If there are policy, the Commission is publishing a lot of initiatives and so on, but how much resources do we have? Very limited. And then it comes, of course, research, innovation. Miguel said, how can we bring research to the market? Then we could enter a very long discussion, because I don't know if really we have to look at the research done by the Commission itself, how we can bring this research, or the money from the Commission is really needed to support whatever kind of research is happening in the countries and sustain the fact that we are developing young talents or experts, and to bring them together, keep them in Europe, sovereignty again. And with this, we develop maybe side activities, which are not exactly maybe those tackled in the project financed by the Commission, but we keep the experience, we develop the experience, and we keep them in Europe, these people in Europe. This is important as well. So I will see now today research like this. And then there's the big challenge is also, yes, of course, trust the supply chain and so on. One thing is very important is also the fact, the understanding of the market needs. I still see quite a gap after 6 years of ECSO between the understanding of the market needs from public administration, whether they are at national level or European level, and the real market needs of today, of critical infrastructure and so on. And I say I'm following this and try to understand. Sometimes I have the feeling to understand something more. I don't pretend I understand. I understand everything, but sometimes I have the feeling I understand something more. And now I'm following. We are developed just recently an initiative to create a network of CISO, Chief Information Security Officers, around Europe, and I'm understanding from them what they need, which is not necessarily what we thought they were needing. They're much simpler requests, very basic. Very basics, but at the same time, they need an effort for what has been said before, to create a community, to bring them as a community, and really interact this community, especially of private, together with the community of the public administration. This interaction will be a very strong interaction, and until we don't have created this kind of link, I think we cannot be sure that we are really going the right direction and investing in the right priorities. So to close my intervention here now, I would say that really we need again to rethink priorities with a better understanding of market needs, but also maybe with a filter of what you call digital sovereignty, but I would simply say with the increase of strategic autonomy in certain sectors. What are these sectors? Good to be discussed.
Thank you very much, Luigi. It's interesting to look at the market. Visa Partners is currently conducting a study. One of the things that we saw was the creation in one member state, I shall not name it, of a cybersecurity fund for SMEs. The fund was 2.5 million euros. There were 500,000 SMEs in that country. The fund was exhausted in 5 days, which I think is actually not bad. I would have said 1 or 2. But that kind of market disconnect certainly is something that needs to be said perhaps a bit louder and clearer. Over to you, sir. Augustin Blanchard from Tikehau Capital. What do you think when you hear all of this from a very Brussels bubble perspective, even though actually, Phédra, I'm not putting you in the Brussels bubble, you, of course, in the Belgian bubble. But from a private investment perspective, what are your reactions and perhaps criticisms, if any?
Money. No, just taking a step back here. So I work at Tikehau Capital. So I represent the private money being poured into the cybersecurity sector in Europe. My fund, Brilliance 3, is a 200 million fund dedicated to European cybersecurity startups and scale-ups. So we basically invest 15, 20 million checks in companies that need maybe 5, maybe 50 million for growth financing. So these companies are venture and growth stage companies in Europe. That's what we do. That's what we do every day. We're part of a larger group called Tikehau Capital. Tikehau Capital is a diversified alternative asset manager dealing with a lot of funds, but they have set up 2 priorities for the next 5 years. The first one, you can guess it, it's climate change. The second one is cybersecurity. So that this has a lot to say about the importance of cybersecurity, at least the importance we attach to cybersecurity as a sector for the next 5 years. I won't repeat about level of attacks, attack surface increasing, etc. We're all convinced. But what we need now is money. Again, big time. Maybe also taking a step back on numbers, because I'm a financier. I like numbers, and we run up numbers every day. We publish a barometer of the European cybersecurity investing environment every year. So it was published in April this month, 1 week ago. So I encourage you to read this. It's very illustrative and very narrative about what's happening right now in cybersecurity investing in Europe. Maybe a first number: what's the amount of what's the total amount of money invested in European cybersecurity? What's your take on that? How much? You have no clue? 10 billion? 10 billion is half of the whole cybersecurity investing in the world. It's a bit too much. 2 billion in Europe has been invested in cybersecurity in 2021. That's 2.5 times higher than 2020. That's huge. That's a big number. However, it represents only 10%, if you do the math, 10% of the total invested amount in cybersecurity in the world, but for 25% of the number of transactions. So again, we run up the numbers. It means that the transactions in Europe versus the rest of the world, dominated by the US, the size of the transactions is smaller. So again, other numbers. Average size of a transaction in cybersecurity in the US, 40 million. Average size of a cybersecurity transaction, when we say transaction, is fundraising, right? Money being poured into the company to grow, not to buy out shareholders. Average size of a cybersecurity transaction in Israel, 20 million. Average size of a cybersecurity transaction in Europe, 10 million. 4 times less. So again, we need to take a step back and find out. The US were at 10 million average 4 years ago. It means, and this is exactly my first point, it means that maybe 3 or 4 years from now, European cybersecurity will be at this kind of level of financing need. We are catching up with the US in terms of transaction size. Read our barometer. It's enlightening. So we need to make sure that we go bigger in terms of transaction size. We need to have the money, we need to have the fund, we need to have the structures in place. The second point, if I may, go bigger, go to the US. European cybersecurity needs to pick up the fight and have US customers. Not only because it's great, it's a fantastic market, and obviously European cybersecurity companies will stay European, will somehow make the bulk of their revenues in Europe, but we need to go to the US to learn more. We need to be more aggressive commercially. And this is my, let's say, investor standpoint on this. We need to help companies, European cybersecurity companies, to shift from technology companies to product companies. Product companies do sell. Sell, sell. And we believe that there is no growth path for European cybersecurity scale-ups and startups that avoid being in the US. So go to the US. And the last point is stay focused. Cybersecurity, we believe, is not cybersecurity investing, is not for everyone. You need to have experts as investors. You need to have experts. You need to have dedicated operating partners to help companies grow in Europe, but also in the US and abroad. Cybersecurity products need to be tailored, they need to be razor sharp, and they need to be explained to the marketplace. And for that, we need skills internally within the companies. We need experts within the cybersecurity funds that are dealing with this. So my last point is about remaining focused. Cybersecurity is not for everyone. There is right now discussions about dedicating 1 billion from European Commission to cybersecurity for investment purposes. We believe that this 1 billion, if you put it in the hands of dedicated cybersecurity investors, can be multiplied by 5 and thus create at least 5 billion cybersecurity funds. This is exactly what we need to finance the next stage of growth for European cybersecurity startups and scale-ups that will demand rounds of 50 to 100 million to grow. My last point is run up a few numbers here. Right now, we deployed 2 billion in European cybersecurity startups, with an average size of 10 million per ticket, per transaction. If we catch up to the US and be at 40 million, increase of fourfold. So we need to find in the coming 3 years, 8 billion to be deployed into cybersecurity, European cybersecurity startups. We need to go bigger. We need to go to the US. We need to stay focused, but we need to be ready for the next 3 to 4 years.
Thank you very much. That's certainly a bit controversial to say go to the US. Certainly not if it's for our companies to try and push them there. Before I open the floor to the questions in this room, and I'm sure there are lots and lots, a quick reminder to our speakers that we are in fact also being watched online via live storm. And we've had a couple of very, very good questions. And in fact, one which is linked also to some of what both Phédra and Luigi have alluded to, which is about keeping the resources in Europe specifically, and keeping them working for European companies. Well, in fact, it's very difficult to compete with the packages offered by both US and Chinese companies. And so the question is, what do we do there? And that will be linked to what you just said, in fact, Augustin. And then one to you specifically, Miguel. In fact, we've had 2 questions regarding this. The objective of ensuring that the Commission and that the Commission complements whatever the member states are doing. And despite this is not my words, this is the questioner's word, putting hurdles such as certification, where certification, once you've been certified in one country, you will often need to start from scratch with the process in the neighboring country. So I'll just throw these 2 questions out, and then I will come to the room, so please already start formulating your question. My colleague is in the back, and we'll come to you. I'd certainly like to ask a question about skills. We've heard a lot about skills. We have an expert in certification in skills in the room, so I'm sure that she'll want to come in. But first, if I can just throw this question out to the panel, perhaps, Miguel, we can start with you, and then we'll come to you, Luigi.
Okay. Well, I think there were 2 questions. One about the Commission complementing what member states do, and coming back to something that Augustin has been said about volume. What came to my mind is something that struck me from a book I read about cybersecurity, which was quite a famous book 3-4 years ago. And important point in the book is the cybersecurity market is very inefficient. In that the same solutions are replicated and bought and over and over. So from a public service perspective, I'm very interested in the matter. So volume is important, I suppose, but I think efficiency and targeting, and you also mentioned it, it's also quite important, because we've seen in other previous waves of investment with digital that it was about pumping in resources and then to discover that the same solutions were sold over and over, which might be in some commercial interest, I have to say, but it's not certainly in taxpayers' money. So the complementarity between the public funding and the private funding, and to see and to check what different member states are doing and trying to complement and synergize, is something of utmost interest from a public service perspective, I would say, and certainly to complement what the Commission is doing, with what member states are doing. So this is precisely what we're doing now, to compare notes. Very important. In terms of certification, I didn't understand quite the question, but indeed the purpose of the European certification framework, which is something new, relatively new, is to avoid precisely this having to be certified, in several countries. And I would say from a public service perspective, there's leverage, which might be funding, which is important, but there's also other leverages that play there, such as compliance, in terms of requirements, and certifying those compliance with those requirements that can actually play a very important role in in this area as well.
Can I just push you on this particular point? How quickly can we expect a European scheme? How quickly will we be there?
Well, we should be with the first one, the common criteria scheme. Well, at least that implementation act should be. We should have it this year. Admittedly, taking some. It's the first time that we're having it, but let's say we should have action there on the common. On that first scheme, sometime this year. I prefer not to give in a particular month.
One understands.
And then also we should be expecting the proposal from ENISA on the cloud scheme to the Commission very soon as well.
Okay, jolly good. And in terms of the certification fund, one would hope that it would thus be cheaper for companies to become certified if they only have to go for one certification rather than 27. Is there a plan, however, for both member states and perhaps the Commission to put together a funding package to support companies obtain such certification? Perhaps the smaller players? Or are we not quite there yet?
We're not quite there yet. I mean, those are two related but different things. I mean, one is the certification itself to define the requirements to comply with, and the different thing is is something which is different, is to support actors in becoming compliant, which is in the picture. It's actually referred to at a small scale, I would say, but still in the Digital Euro program, there is something like that. It would make sense indeed to have that. No plan, I would say, because I cannot announce anything like that. But I see where you're going, and that would be that would make sense. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn to Luigi now, but before I go on, Augustin, just to say that on the chat, apparently you're very much a star. A lot of people are in agreement with you. One person, however, noted, yes, go to the US, but don't get bought up. How do we avoid that? But I'll please keep that one in mind. I'm going to go to Luigi first on the skills issue.
No, simply to say that I like cybersecurity because I learn a little bit more every day about this. It's quite complex, and sometimes I learn also. I better understand what I'm saying, because for years, sometimes I said with my team, with Danilo is there, said we have to do accelerator of SMEs to help them, so on. But accelerator. Okay, I repeat the sentence. But what does it mean in the global context? And actually, this earlier. End of last week, we had a discussion with one investors, and I realized what accelerator means. And this is linked with what he said. We have to go to the US. We have to sell to the US. But are we able to sell to the US? Because we have good technology, but do we have skilled people to sell? Can we do good marketing, good salespeople? This is what we miss. And why we miss it? Because these people, we don't pay enough them. So the money that we receive as investors should not only go to technology as is used, because we put money on technology, we do big things which are working or not working. But are we paying enough our people, our skilled people, not only technology, but the sales guys who are creating value, this value that will increase the value of the company, which will help them to reach this 5 times this is the point. Are we doing this? No. Today, we are not doing this enough. So we lose skilled people because then they're taken by the usual companies. And this is the point for the skills.
Augustin, how do they not get bought up? And then Phédra, I'm coming to you because you've been nodding wildly.
Yeah, by being very expensive. Straight. No, all jokes aside, completely in agreement with you. The way to avoid let's take a step back again. Right now, US companies, US startups are poaching people from teams in European cybersecurity startups. They are poaching them because they can offer 2 or 3 times as much as salary. That's huge. And how do European startups compete with that? They compete by coming to us, asking for money. But they need to have the fuel, they need to have the velocities, they need to have the revenues. So how do you pick up the fight with US scale-ups and startups, again, you take money and you go to the US to hire some sales guys. This is what you do. They pick. I'm sorry if I'm being a bit too much, maybe, but they come for R&D skills in Europe. We need to come for sales and marketing skills in the US. That's what we would recommend. And if you don't want, I mean, being bought up, at some point, yes, there is an acquirer because we are not here for philanthropy. But the point is, you have liquidity in the market, you have ways to raise bigger, and this is why we need actually bigger funds investing in cybersecurity to provide liquidity to existing investors without having the problem of saying, oh, am I going to the US to be bought out? No, you can stay in Europe, and we need to have the financing environment to do just that.
Thank you. Phédra, please.
I'm crying a little bit because I will speak as a representative of the government, and I see all these poor private companies crying because they are not enough paid. But yeah, I have to say that for us, it's double peine, vous voyez? European and administration. So you have some pain to find the right profile. But can you imagine, as the National Cybersecurity Agency, it's really, really hard for me to find the right profile. But I'm finding them. Well, okay, not this kind of level. But it's quite funny to say, oh, we are not enough paid, and it's true, of course. But as a National Cybersecurity Agency, we have also we need also some expert and so on. And I think it's the same in the European Commission, but it's worse in the Belgian administration, I have to say. So, yeah, I'm crying a little bit, you know.
Can I push you on that, though? You're saying that you are finding some. What's the recipe to go and get them, but more importantly, to retain them? Because I think retaining people as much as hiring them is an issue here.
Because we're so fun. No, I'm kidding. No, I think that there is a kind of purpose, you know, because there is. I have a lot of people. They are young people, you know. They are just coming from the universities and so on, and it's a big occasion to begin a career in a cybersecurity agency. And we are quite young also, and we are building a lot of stuff. And I have also some. I can't say old people. It's not true, but some people with a career behind, mature, with a career behind, and it's also a kind of renewal, you know. They had a career in the private sector, and okay, it's cool, but now they have the occasion to work for, je sais pas moi, le bien public, you know. Voilà, and it's working. But I have also to say that as a public administration, we pay a lot for training. We train, and not the little training that you can. No. The really expensive training and so on. And there is also this purpose, this value of the work. And at this moment, it's working. I don't breathe because I'm afraid that they will run, you know.
Keep doing what you're doing, but it's certainly interesting to hear real practical lessons learned like this. To go back to the whole go to America debate, of course, it's interesting to hear that the FIC team has certainly heeded that advice, because of course we will be hosting the first ever FIC North America in Montreal later this year in November. And we'll with a number of US actors as well. So certainly we've heeded your advice. I'm going to open now to the room. Please raise your hands if you have a question or a comment or a criticism. Don't be shy. There are more questions online, but I want to make sure the people who actually made the effort to turn up despite the beautiful weather should have a shot. Yep, gentlemen. in the back. Hello, Elias. How are you? If you could just introduce yourself for the people who don't know you. Who? Exactly.
Hello, Elias Hanjos from Broadcom. Thank you very much for this very interesting debate. I couldn't help myself feeling very close to some of the comments that gentleman from the venture capital industry has been making. And I was wondering, the advice that you've given around go to the US, position yourself into high growth markets is advice that I have found myself giving sometimes. So I was wondering, how does this advice fit with the broader policy that we see in the European Union that I would describe as more focused around being industrial and to some degree more protectionist, more aiming at making sure that we promote European standards first, European technologies first. If I want to go out and sell in the US and India, I want to be putting a product that relates to those markets. How easy would it be to do that if I'm focused on EU-only stuff, values, standards, requirements, I guess? This is a bit provocative perhaps, but I think it's very relevant if we want to sell to those markets.
Thank you. Is there another question that we can group, or shall we just throw this one? We'll start with this. Okay, who wants to start? Augustin?
That's a tricky one. Yeah. Yeah, you have to fight for it, actually. No, it's a very delicate question. The question is about how do we design a product? Do we design it for European use only, like we would do for appliances, 50 hertz or 110 volts, 220 volts? I would tend to believe that if your product is rightly designed, it can sell everywhere. Maybe it's a too easy answer, but the point is, US products do sell in Europe. Why do European products wouldn't sell in the US? We have companies in our portfolio designing products originally for European markets and selling like crazy in the US. I think the problem is not about product design, it's about product marketing. And definitely when you handle product marketing, then you have to design something more if you want to go to the US. You have to be more aggressive, you have to be more, you have to be sharper. So my way of answering to your question is about, let's not care about the product design, let's care about the marketing. But maybe that's too easy.
I would say that it could be an demonstration of what you said, because look at the large European company, traditional one, which are linked to the governments and so on. They sell a lot their own country to their own government, but then when it comes to sell outside, they sell much better outside Europe than in other European countries, both because there are other major companies which are already there, local ones, but also because they're attracted much more by the external market. So they, but this, I would say, because they do specific marketing to certain specific countries. So it goes somehow in your direction.
And have you identified particular skills that match both the sort of the marketing and the cyber, but in a foreign market for a European company? I'm asking a very specific questions, but really, who do we need to recruit? What are we after? And how do we make sure that we have those people if they don't exist right now? And where does perhaps at some point the European Commission come in, or national governments with specific training programs?
Well, exactly, because I don't think we need only, well, we can start recruiting them from outside, but also I would say from UK, because UK also they're very skilled in as a sales, as marketing guys. A
But is it just
mentality
a
which is
language issue?
I mean,
Is it a
no, it's a
cultural issue?
mentality, it's a culture, I would say. Not only language, it's a culture of which is slightly different. It's an approach which is slightly different. But then also, I would say with the commission, what we said, also for training, I think we maybe at the beginning we have to look for this, let's say, expert from outside, but we have to start somehow developing our own people, our own skills in country. And don't be afraid to say to people, okay, you will be an expert salesman. This is not a bad word, because today we say, oh, you will be a technology expert. That's
Here?
great. But today we'll say you are an expert. You are going to sell something, and you will make money for your company and for yourself. This looks like something today which is inconvenient almost.
Yes,
Because
we
everybody wants to
Europeans
be the
find
technology.
talking about money very vulgar, don't we?
Yes, it's very vulgar in Europe to make money.
Miguel, you look like you weren't completely in agreement at some point. Do you want to come in at this stage?
Well, I don't want to believe normally in this cultural superiority of the United States or Anglo-Saxon world or whatever. There's a couple of issues here. Well, first of all, when it comes to digital, the situation is what it is. There's a dominance of the United States. That this is a market. These are market realities. There's few areas where Europe is in digital, where Europe is dominant, and cyber is not one of them. And so we are catching up. So structurally, there's something to do there. It's not just about marketing or talking nicely, things like that. Yeah, that can help marketing, but there's an issue of industrial policy that there's a discussion that this is not a taboo, discussion anymore in certain areas, and several countries in the world are doing it. And when it comes to it, the United States, they do have an industrial policy to support key sectors. Talking artificial intelligence, and I'm talking a number of sectors, and there's something to do there. So it's not just down to the people, to the companies to have to find good to fight for themselves. So there's something in terms of a kind of strategy as a block, if I can say it. And then you've alluded to something that is not unique in cybersecurity, which is the internal market, the fragmentation that exists in many areas. I mean, compared to the US market. But that's well known. It's not just here. It's a recurrent issue. What you said, Luigi, is very true. Very often you hear this. Now, I find it easier to go sell to the States rather than go into the different markets and knocking on different doors. That's an issue that we've had for some time, not just in cybersecurity. It's a horizontal one.
Thank you. I wanted to come back a little bit to the network issue that Luigi raised, because of course networks are an increasing part of cybersecurity. I mean, certainly at the FIC we've created a very large network. ECSO has created a very large network. The European Commission is creating lots of networks. But how do we avoid the fragmentation of networks, if I can call it that? I mean, it's a bit of an exaggeration, but what do we? I'm not going to ask what a network can be used for, but how do we not avoid an over presence of networks? How do you federate these different networks ultimately? And Luigi, I'm going to ask you that one.
I was hoping you were saying to federate the network, because she is part of this network of national centers. That's it. So probably she has an experience on that. But indeed, actually, honestly, I was discussing with Miguel last week. Same point, and we were saying, okay, we could have a very complex matrix when you look at the different communities that you can, communities when you can look from the country point of view, from the different applications, where the energy, the transport, and so on, or the different kind of skills that you could have, the researcher guys, the investors, the CISO, as we mentioned, and so we really have very complex matrix. Where say, can we really follow all this? In theory, yes, we should. In practice, we have to start from something, from those priorities, and try to bring them together and develop it progressively, all the links. That's we cannot do. I mean, if we want to handle this, I would say 30, 50, whatever kind of networks that potentially exist in Europe, it will be impossible to control, honestly. So how we can do this? This is what we are just testing, as I mentioned before, this network of CISO.
Indeed.
It just, I mean, it's a trial and error. We don't have the exact solution today, but we see people are coming, so we try and we progress. And I suppose also the same is doing well, but that's exactly what Phédra and Miguel could say more at the commission level. Now they're bringing together the countries, how they're going to work.
And that was indeed, and I think it's interesting that the FIC, of course, is interested in the CISO network and is really looking to build its own community. But over to you, Phédra, with what have been the real takeaways from the various networks that you're a part of? Because I know you are a networker extraordinaire. You are part of lots of networks. You're part of the Women for Cyber network. Of course, you're part, and now as the CCB, you're part of this European network. What are the pluses and minuses? And when it comes to funding specifically, since that is the theme of today, and I'm afraid that Augustin will say that I'm not focused and that we've touched on too many things and really I don't want to get told off. But in terms of funding, are you guys exchanging lessons learned, tips and tricks? Sorry, it's a broad question in one, but.
Is it really a question for me? So we are talking a lot about all the network in Europe and so on, and I'm just trying to manage my own networks in Belgium, you know. So I would like to begin with these networks because at this moment it's not so easy, because as a national it's interesting to explain how we will manage our national networks, because it's quite hard in Belgium. I have to say that the European Cybersecurity Competence Center, it's a perfect occasion for us to put all the people together, because there is a lot of network, there is a lot of actors in Belgium, and now we have the perfect occasion to put all these people together. Thank you, Miguel. Thank you, the European Commission. Because we are working really at political level, and sometimes political level is not really linked with the community, with the ground, and so on. So we, at a national level, we build some networks. By example, in the context also of the NIS directive and the NIS law, we put together all the people having some trouble is not the exact term, but some challenges with the implementation of NIS. And it was not obvious, because there is the sectorial authorities, there is the operator of essential services, and so on. And we put all these people together, and they were so happy to be together, you know, because it was not specifically the habit in Belgium to put all these people together. And now with the National Competence Center, we will have the marvelous opportunity to put all the representative of the private sector, because I have to say that as a national agency, I don't have a lot of contact with the private sector. And ECSO is also really useful for this kind of stuff. And it will be the perfect occasion to have finally this really good and formalized link with the private sector, with also the academic sector and the other administration, because as I said, we notified we have noticed the fact that there is a lot of administration in Belgium working in cybersecurity. And it was quite, comment dirait-on, surprising to see all the administration working on cybersecurity. So at this moment, we are organizing all these networks, and there is also the Cybersecurity Coalition, by example, and we are organizing all this stuff to have our own network in Belgium. And yes, à côté de ça, I'm also a part of European network and so on. But at this moment, I have to say, we are just working to manage our own networks in Belgium.
Oh, sorry, I realized I didn't really reply completely to your question. But I would say that when you create a network or many networks, don't overcomplicate them. Just make it simple. And the simplest thing is to create the link across the different persons. Once they create a link, then the person themselves will self-structure, will organize, and they will find solution to whatever issue they're coming. Some of things are developing that way. But first of all, you have to create the link across the different person, across the different agency, whatever. Then it will come.
Thank you. So I have a question now. Sorry, I will. Yes, please, actually come in, and I'll keep my question for afterwards. Anyone else? And over there. Thank you. And there. Oh God, I'm never going to ask my questions. Thank God
Thank
we
you
have
very
a
much.
drink after.
A question
Please
actually
introduce
to.
yourself.
Oh yes, of course. Goran Gotter from BlackBerry. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for this very insightful conversation. I wanted to actually touch upon actually something also that Elias mentioned previously. Although it's a bit more focused in the area more of competitiveness, it's not about that much venture capital. But the question is, in the context of the European certification framework, so basically, in essence, the new schemes that are being developed under the Cybersecurity Act, we see a lot of potential there, and certainly the industry is very much motivated to use those frameworks for boost their competitiveness, across the EU. However, one of the beauties of the cybersecurity framework, also being in its infancy, is that for the time being, it's a bit, as Luigi mentioned, it's test and fail, right? I mean, test and error. We're still in the process of trying to identify where the framework would actually have a value, which certifications would be more valuable than others, and so on. And I'm taking a step back here because also in parallel, what we see happening at the same time under the review of the NIS directive is that the European decision makers are tending to lean towards a wording that may introduce mandatory requirements for certification in the future. Now, here my question is, if this is something that, for instance, is foreseen to happen in the next couple of years, let's say, right? To what extent that could hinder potentially the ability of some of the smaller players to compete, because we know that the certification processes can be extremely costly, not only in terms of financial resources, but also of basically workforce that will have to be pulled throughout the process. It takes months to certify a specific set of product, so a specific piece of software or a specific service. So, my question here is how we can make the certification framework to be as efficient as possible without creating potential barriers to market access or competitiveness for the smaller players. Particularly, actually, as some of the big players probably would be able to recoup the investment because of the volume they have and the workforce they have. Probably for the smaller ones, it would be a bit more difficult. But happy to hear your views on that.
Thank you. We're going to group a couple of questions because actually we have 22 minutes left, and I'm a stickler for time. Please. Yep. And there was.
All right, so thank you very much. I'm Dieter Stromans. I represent Mans Consulting, a strategic security consultancy company in Brussels. So I've gathered a few hints from what you've all been talking about and just grouped them into three main sections for my question. So first of all, I think there's also a legal part to everything we're discussing here. And I'll also join in to the gentleman's discussion about the hindrances that this provides. I think we've talked about UK talent, which is a bit closer to home than the US, although I do agree with the US talent being there. They have quite the taste for Malta and Cyprus when it comes to deploying their actions.
Oh, sorry?
Malta and Cyprus, in terms of the legal frameworks, which are a bit easier in those areas, especially in the sector of open source intelligence, which is more what we specify in. But that is one part of it. So, like, we're talking about money. I know this is the topic of today, but how do we create those synergies also with the legal frameworks? How this money can be accompanied and facilitated through more acceptable legal frameworks. I think
understood.
I've made myself
the right
clear
legal
there.
framework to generate
Exactly.
what we ultimately need. Okay.
Yes. Now, second of all, I'll take a step back also just from my generational point of view. I mean, given the median age in this room, I think it's always
Don't
good
be
for...
rude now.
Oubliez ce que j'ai dit. Basically, I see a lot of people from my generation, from my pool of colleagues and peers, be it from the online community, which is much bigger than most people think it is, and much more skilled. And I see a lot of Kevin Mitnicks in my surroundings, or potential Kevin Mitnicks. They are not giving the possibilities. They're not giving the talent or the money to develop what they're capable of. I think a lot of people forget that nowadays everything is mostly Google away. I mean, I think that the discussion also, which was this, we had at the former FIC with some very, I think it was with representatives of European armies. I will keep it short.
Thank you.
It was also just asking about those retention rates, which we touched upon. There were mainly no answers. It was a bit dancing around the answer and not really giving anything, because I think we have to be honest and say we are not able to keep these people, these young talented people, in the European community because we're just not attractive enough.
I think Augustin will disagree with you, but okay.
Yes. And now the final part of my question is just, I think also that in terms of cyber, we are still not in this setting and this mood of reality, which is that we are maybe not at a cyber war, but there is still heavy cyber competition, and we're just not up to scale yet, which is also which Mr. Blanchard has touched upon. So how do we make sure that we remain competitive using those funds and multiplying them, as Mr. Blanchard has explained? How do we use our skills and our talent in-house to make sure that we remain competitive facing those actors such as the US, China, etc., instead of saying, well, it is how it is, it's the status quo, and let's just stay there? Thank you.
Thank you very much. A forward-looking question. And there was one here. Yes, please, sir.
Thank you so much for your presentation and your comments. My name is Andrea Mogni. I'm working as a senior consultant for Phédra. Couple of questions about financial instruments and the money. If you look at the regulation implementing the European digital strategy, you will have a total budget of 7.2 billion. Then, of course, in that regulation, there is explicit reference to the use of other European financial instruments, including Horizon Europe, Connecting Europe. You have the role of EIB, European Investment Bank. You have regional funds. You have social funds. And also you have the agricultural and the fishery funds. So, I mean, all the batteries of European funds are available in order to support the European autonomy in the field of digital and in the field of cybersecurity. This is the overarching objective of European strategy, to become leader, to become the most important partner in the world by 2030 in the field of digital. I fully agree with you that we needed to deal with the US. You have also mentioned Israel, which is also an important partner. But the European objective is to become a leader in the field of digital by 2030, meaning sovereignty, autonomy, and leadership in terms also of technical standards and whatever. So my question is on these financial instruments. Do you think that European companies, European think tanks, European industries, European academia will be capable to participate in the call of proposals, in the tenders being issued by the European Commission at present or in the near future in the field of cybersecurity? My second question is the defense dimension of cybersecurity, the security dimension of cybersecurity. European countries are expected to expand their own military budget following NATO commitments, etc., etc. And one of the key areas where a lot of money will be mobilized is cybersecurity. How can we manage this dimension, this security, this defense dimension, particularly when you advocate more cooperation with the US? You know that dealing with the US is hell, particularly in the field of security, in the field of defense.
So sorry, sir. We have very little time left. I would like them to be able to answer your question.
These are basically two questions. One is on financial instruments, capacity for Europe to participate in these financial instruments. And second is the defense dimension of cybersecurity.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take our speakers in order. Miguel, I'm going to start with you. Quite a few questions. If you can manage to answer them all in about, 5 minutes, more the power to you.
I will go quickly on the certification and the burden for smaller players. So, certification is there also meant to help also smaller players, by the way. So the answer, I suppose, is there might be several, but it's in proportionality. So it depends on the scope that you look at. You have different levels of, let's say, compliance, basic, substantial, high. It remains voluntary still. And Pauline, you mentioned before there's requirements and then the funding that can be brought. So I would say that it's very much in how the actual implementation, the practical implementation, the proportionality of the requirements, and that what I'm trying to say is this certification framework is quite a horizontal instrument that can be implemented in practice in different ways and depending in different sectors and the requirements. You can have sectoral requirements and so forth. So I suppose the proof will be in the pudding, actually, when it will come to specific schemes and requirements, legal requirements related to it.
So the proof is in the algorithm these days.
The proof is in the algorithm, if you like. Yes, actually.
Sorry, carry on.
No, because that makes me think also, artificial intelligence, which is one of the important ones currently being discussed, the legislation in Council and Parliament. There's also reference to it, to the artificial intelligence systems that are risky, let's say, and to certify that they abide by certain requirements. So it would be something like that as well. And then, to the last questions, the calls for proposals. The companies, European companies, are definitely responding to those, to the cybersecurity calls when it comes to Horizon Europe, which is the program I know best. And then we have this new program, Digital Europe program, where let's see. Just take advantage to announce that there's currently an evaluation, a call for proposals which is open for Digital Europe Cyber, for national coordination centers, which is for member states, but also for health and cyber. And there will be another call opened in September. So watch the space. And on defense, there's funding for it, European Defense Fund, precisely. And it's very true that cyber is an important topic in there. Now, currently, we're looking into the synergies, because there are different rules that apply there. For Horizon, you can really support, cybersecurity or any research for that matter with the exclusive military focus. But we're looking for ways of synergies. But by the way, that's something we're also discussing with member states in the context of the competence center, the synergies between cyber defense and cyber civil when it comes to investment.
And I should just point that on this, the European Defence Fund, of course, has projects specifically on cyber, in addition to, of course, the PESCO projects which exist. So, okay, good. We're pretty much on track. Come on, Phédra, I believe in you. You can do it. 5 minutes to answer all of these questions. You might want to skip one or two. I won't blame you.
Really? I'm not a good person to answer a lot of this question, I have to say, really. No.
Okay.
I said I don't have any clue about all the...
Yes, you're just a cybersecurity expert. I realize you
No,
really...
but all the funds and so on, I have some people who knows. I don't know.
And in terms of perhaps without necessarily knowing the details, the link between the security and the defense side of things, or is this something you're not allowed to talk about?
Alors, in Belgium, it's quite a tricky question. But of course, when we have wrote, our new strategy, it was written with all the security and intelligence services, and we integrate, of course, defense parts, because we know that cyberspace is a new domain. It's a new military domain. So, of course, it's totally important, but it's absolutely not our competencies, and we just be sure to keep the border between cybersecurity and cyber defense.
Okay, understood. Luigi, do you want to tackle a couple of these? I think you should.
No. Well, it's maybe. Well, it's intriguing, the legal story, but but I don't have an answer, honestly.
You know what? We'll organize another one specifically on the legal frameworks. And I really would encourage you to come to FIC, because there are quite a few panels that are really on that legal aspect, which I couldn't agree more is fundamental.
Yeah, but the legal aspect is fundamental. If whatever we do, when Miguel was talking about industrial policy, we do need a legal framework which is somehow still very scattered. When you look at the number of legislations which are dealing with directly or indirectly with cybersecurity at the European Parliament today, I think we are around 15, if not more. It's quite complex, put it in a polite word. Just as he said about the funding, because it's interesting, the funding, the different kind of funding. We were discussing with the previous commissioner, the budget, Oettinger, who was the one which, by the way, which we built up the PPP on cybersecurity. And with Oettinger, we were discussing about the need to somehow to coordinate the spending of the so many different budget which are used in Europe. And cybersecurity said at the end it came, that's too early. That's too early to have something which is coordinated and focused. It said will likely be in the fall, not in the coming commission, so not this one, but probably in the other one, in the next one after, or because and actually what they are doing, I mean what the commission of member states are doing with this competence center, it's just a way they could be the tool which is helping somehow, if not coordinating, but just giving a global view, a strategic view of where this today scattered budget can be focused in the future. So it really depends on them, on the commission and member states to help the next commissioner to really coordinate this funding rather than remaining scattered.
Okay, but the young members of our audience will be retired by then. I mean, what the hell are we going to tell them? Augustin, I'm going to hand over to you, and I'm going to add my question, which I wanted to ask earlier, which I'm just on time to ask you. I'm hearing champagne
7 minutes
pop, so yeah, max.
Okay.
I don't want the champagne to get warm. But the question was, you mentioned your barometer, which is has just been published. My question was, who's doing well and who's doing less well in Europe in terms of investing in cybersecurity? What are some of the lessons learned? Or who should we be looking to as an example? And what could we be doing better?
French people.
Of course. What else? But other than that.
Okay, that's another tricky one. To be perfectly honest, I couldn't tell you. A lot of things are happening in the Netherlands. This is a great moment for Dutch cybersecurity. Belgium, we are actively looking into it as investors. So we are roaming Wallonie and Flandre. So it's incredible what we're seeing right now. Germany, a tough nut to crack, but we will get there soon enough. So it's booming, it's vibrant. We have a fantastic cybersecurity scene in Europe. France, of course, but what can you do? We're good in market. No, I won't go deeper into this. We are all Europeans, and we are doing very well in cybersecurity. Again, we need to go across the pond, but that's for further discussion. On the legislation, legal topics, one remark, we can only hope that this will replace other existing frameworks, right? Superseding, replacing, providing another framework, not adding another layer. Hopefully, we get through this. On financing, the best financing for Europe is the one that does not compete internally between public funds or between public funding, and that does not compete with private funding, because you don't want to end up in a situation where you have public funding moving away private funding from a specific target, because there is increased competition on the same field, and it beats the purpose. So, to cut a long story short, equity is, in our view, the right instrument to finance cybersecurity at the European level. We need equity, so we need to distribute equity. We need to provide convertible equity. this is the product that has the most discipline, the most financial discipline out there. So in our view, this is the best way to finance cybersecurity startups, so as to avoid competition with private funding.
Thank
I
you very
hope
much.
it was clear.
Well, there's no shouting in the audience, but then again, it's almost drink time, so I understand that. Just one thing to come back on the legal framework. I don't think we can hope for too much simplification in Brussels, because one, it's Brussels, and number two, so many people would be out of a job to explain that complex legal framework to others. But on that note, I would like to thank you all very, very much for coming. I'm sorry I'm cutting this discussion short. I still had quite a few questions, which I'll be coming to you all for. It really was lovely to have everyone in one room again. I hope this is only the beginning of several more events like this. I would like to thank my colleagues in Paris, first and foremost, Guillaume Tissier, who of course is one of the co-founders of the FIC. He can answer all of your questions about the FIC 7th to the 9th of June. We hope to see you there.